we're all ready, I guess.
We are currently recording, and I will go live on the streaming if that works.
Okay. Tell me when we're all live and I'll start.
Will do. It'll take just a minute to load. Okay, we are live streaming.
Okay. So we're totally live?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the Village of Mamaroneck Planning Board meeting on April 28th, 2021. Welcome. Before we continue with the actual agenda, I just want to explain for the participants on this that there's a change in the Zoom procedures for this evening. We are not going to be using the chat function. We found out that the use of the chat function does not become part of the public record. We have two public hearings this evening and an opportunity for the public to speak about each of the applications. So when that time comes, if you would, when we will notify anyone watching this or anyone participating in this, that time has come. And we will ask that you raise your hand using the raise hand button. And we will acknowledge you and promote you to panelists so that we can hear your remarks on the application if there's anyone that so wishes to do that. But the chat function will not be available because it's not following the public meeting rules. And before we start the meeting, for the purposes of the minute taking, I'll take attendance and make sure I don't forget anybody this time. We have planning board members, Cindy Goldstein, Richard Littman, John Burney, Ellen Styler. We have our planning consultant from AKRF, Stephen Gates. We have our consulting engineer from Keller Sessions, Esteban Garcia. We have our landscape architect consultant, Susan Oakley from Terrabella Landscaping. We have Teresa Bakner, our land use attorney. We have Amber Novak, our village planner, and we have Frank Tavolacci, the building inspector. Did I get everybody this time? Well, and me, well, that goes without saying. The person watching this will be able to, I think, get me. Okay, so that's that. And we have no minutes tonight. So we'll go right into our continued public hearing for 652 Shore Acres Drive. The applicant is adding an addition to the existing garage and kitchen family room in the back of the house, in addition to a pool and spa and cabana and reworking the deck. This first came to us in September. And since then, the applicant's been very busy at HCZM and doing all sorts of things. We have a site plan and a wetlands permit with regards to this project. So let's have the applicants promoted and they can bring us up to date on everything that's been going on for the past several months. You've had FEMA demap you and all sorts of things going on. So walk us through it. And then we'll talk about what the next steps would be.
Great. I'll be presenting mostly, but I guess I'll wait for Tony Geoffrey to come on as well. Looks like he's here now.
Okay, just identify yourself, please, for the record.
Great.
There's Tony.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see you all again. I'm Tony Geoffrey, a member of the law firm Cuddy & Feeder, 445 Hamilton Avenue, White Plains, New York, on behalf of the applicants, Caroline Young and Stephen Trachtenboy, who are here and have been elevated to panelists. I'm also joined this evening by Brandon Stewart, who I see on the screen, Michael Stein, our engineering consultant, and Bill Kenny, our wetlands consultant, who is here this evening as well. Madam Chair, as you indicated, we've been busy since we last appeared before you back in September. We appeared before the Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission. I would like to say that we've been busy with them, but we were waiting for our LOMA to come through, and that was the reason why we've been delayed in coming back before you. So I'm pleased to report, as you indicated, that has come in. We do have some modifications to the proposal, And for the benefit of the public, this is a proposal that's classified within the R10 one-family residential zoning district, and we do need the wetlands permit and site plan approval for accessory residential improvements. And the premises abuts the east basin of the Mamaroneck Harbor, and we are proposing no changes beyond the existing seawall. I'm pleased to report that there are no improvements that are proposed within the wetland. The improvements in the buffer area will be areas that are already disturbed with existing structures or manicured lawn. Some of the benefits and the modifications that Brandon will walk you through in a moment are that we're reducing the impervious surface coverage within the wetland buffer since we last appeared before you. We're restoring more flood volume, which are additional benefits to the proposal. And I think it would probably be best if Brandon can share his screen, walk you through the proposal, and then we'll address any additional items or answer any questions that you do have.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Tony, for the intro. Yes, again, Brandon Stewart, representing Michael Lewis Architects. And looks like it will let me share my screen. Can everyone see the aerial image there? Oh, not quite yet.
No, not quite yet. Right.
There we go. You can see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, just to reorient those of you that reviewed this back in September, and also perhaps for a brief introduction for those here that may not have been with us in that meeting. As Tony mentioned, the property is located here, sort of at the end of the basin before the bridge. The lot we're talking about is one of the most, if not the most heavily wooded lot here. And can't see much of the house. I'll show you, and in the next image, you'll see it. This tree we talked about a lot in the fall, and we'll talk about it today as well. A very important tree that's kind of crucial to the project that we've worked around from the start. Here's the property without the foliage. So Stephen and Caroline started working with us to make a few improvements to the property. Firstly, to remove the existing impervious stone patio and wood deck that wraps around their family room here. Replace it with a pervious wood deck that leads down to an in-ground pool with minimal paving around it. They've also asked us to design a one-story pool cabana, which extends off the back of what is now and will continue to be the garage, as well as to construct a second-story office addition on top of that garage. Where there are also various improvements at the interior on the first floor, including a small mudroom addition that will come out here next to the driveway, as well as renovations to the second floor as well, and an addition that falls squarely on top of the existing footprint of the one-story family room here. And then lastly, that second-story addition will be connected to the second-story office above the garage via a breezeway bridge that connects the two structures. If we move to the rendering that we've done at this stage, you can see those various improvements. And it's been important to the owners from the beginning in thinking about this pool, to not have any more paving around it than is strictly necessary. They've really wanted it to be nestled into the lawn and into the landscaping. It's been important for them to add native plantings throughout to nestle all of the new improvements into the site. And William, Kenny, and team can address that a little bit more in a minute. It's also was important for them for all of the proposed structures to be constructed above the base flood elevation, to leave the site in a good situation flood volume wise. And so now perhaps it'll be useful if I'll walk you through specifically what's changed since the board last reviewed the project. As Tony sort of mentioned some of the things that have happened. In every regard, the changes that have occurred to the project are bringing it further into compliance than it already was when you last saw it. So first of all, the existing garage is currently existing non-conforming with regards to the side setback. Previously, we were proposing to reconstruct the wall of it 4 inches inward so that it would become compliant. Now we're proposing to reconstruct it 7 inches closer into the property to bring it even more into compliance. The owners instructed us to reduce the overall bulk of this 1-story cabana. So whereas before it jutted out 4 additional feet towards the water's edge, it's now been shaved back 4 feet. You may remember that this connector piece between the 2 buildings used to be 2 stories tall, used to house a stair and it used to connect the structure at both levels. That ended up taking some of the available flood volume, as it still lies in plan within the flood zone. So even though the previous project was still providing a net increase of available flood volume, this new proposed project now provides even more, now that this bridge connector only exists at the 2nd story. Floodwaters can recede in there, obviously, making the project better in that regard. As Tony mentioned, there's a net increase of 70 square feet of overall building coverage on the site since you last saw the project. But notably, there is a decrease of 98 square feet of coverage that was previously shown within the wetland buffer that is no longer in the project. So overall 70 square feet added to the site, but at the same time 98 square feet that were proposed within the buffer are now gone. The pool equipment room, which is to be located completely enclosed and completely above the base flood elevation, was previously proposed to be slightly closer to the water's edge than it is now. It's been moved back towards the street by 6 or 8 feet. And then there was also a solid fireplace that used to be located around here, if you can see where my mouse is, that has now been took away from available flood volume and sat within the wetland buffer, and is now has been removed from the project. So this is now all open below, all the way along the perimeter of this this new deck. And so with that, I'll just say we're happy to see Stephen and Caroline take initiative on so many of these things without coercion from the architects or direct pressure from the village. And we're excited to see this move forward. I guess unless there are specific questions for me, I'll turn the floor over to Bill Kenny and/or Katie Haas to discuss some of the landscaping proposals.
This is Bill Kenny. Would you like me to proceed, or do you have any questions at this time?
Oh, sorry, Chairwoman. I believe you're on mute. If you're.
Thank you.
There
Thank
we
you.
go.
Okay. Okay. I would just like to see a plan larger on the screen that shows where the flood zone is, where the wetlands buffer is,
Sure.
vis-a-vis, the improvements, right?
Sure.
A little bit bigger so that we can, so we can see it.
So this is a coverage diagram that shows this light blue hatched area is the existing deck to be removed that was previously impervious, and it being replaced by Pervious wood decking all around. The impervious things that are being added are obviously the pool, the spa, which are both within the wetland buffer. This heavy pink line represents the 100-foot wetland buffer from the water's edge.
Okay.
And then you can see these light green shaded areas are the proposed additions: the cabana, the breezeway bridge, and mudroom here against the house. Also on this diagram, we're showing this dark orange line that wraps around. That is the 12-foot O topo line representing the base flood elevation. One thing I failed to mention is that one of the proposed modifications of the first floor of the house is to raise the floor of the family room, which currently sits 6 inches below where it would need to be compliant with the 2 feet above the base flood elevation. That's proposed to be reconstructed 6 inches higher, so that the whole house and cabana now will be fully compliant with regards to that BFE.
Right. And Madam Chair, I think it's just important to stress the efforts and sensitivity that these applicants have taken in order to decrease nonconformities on the site, to make things more in compliance with the FEMA flood mapping, and also to recognize what they're proposing to do as it relates to the things that you're charged with evaluating in terms of the wetlands permit, what the Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission is required to evaluate. So I think there's a significant amount of effort that was done in order to recognize things that could be done to make this property better.
I have a question. I just have two questions, and maybe this is not the best map to look at, but could you just show us the outline of the fencing that would be required for the pool?
Yes, let me pull that up. So currently there is a fence on the property that runs along both of the side property lines and on the top of the seawall. And so in order to close the perimeter, there's a gate proposed here underneath the breezeway bridge that would create the full enclosure. There's also been discussion with the owners, even though it wouldn't be required, and we're still undecided about this, about whether for their own peace of mind and that of their 2 children, if they would want to have an additional fence that separated the pool area from the rest of the yard. So that's what you're seeing with this blue line that wraps around this area.
So that's a maybe, you're not sure about that.
Right, but the New York State required 4-foot perimeter will run, as I said, along the property lines, which already exists there, and it will require us to just close it off on either side and provide a gate underneath the breezeway bridge.
So is there a fence on top of the seawall to make it the 4-foot height?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there's stone, okay.
Mhm.
And so you were mentioning raising the floor of the family room. What's under that, or would that be available for water to flow under in the unfortunate situation it needs to? So it's
No,
just sort of elevated?
Currently, the family room is enclosed all the way to grade. There's a crawl space that's accessible from the main Center Hall Colonial portion of the house here. There's a basement underneath it and a crawl space that accesses some of the space underneath the existing first floor. We're not sure what the extent of it is. So that is not proposed to be opened up for floodwaters to recede underneath the existing house. The compliance that we're bringing the house into there just refers to the finished floor level being raised to where it's supposed to be. However, I should mention that the proposed building that we're creating, which is the cabana, is, like you're saying, completely elevated above and sits on posts that is completely open below.
Okay. And then you mentioned pervious wood decking. Is that like a Trex? How is that pervious?
It'll be an ipe, which is like a hardwood decking that is just simply installed with gaps between the boards, as opposed to tight joints, which is how the deck is currently constructed.
So,
And then underneath it, there will be a bed of gravel underneath the entire deck area as the water flows through.
okay, so this may be a question for maybe Mr. Garcia or any other engineering expert. Gravel doesn't, I guess, depending on the substrata of the gravel, it's not always considered to truly be pervious. It's still somewhat impervious. So I was just wondering, having whatever gap in the deck planking, if that's enough to really qualify as calling it pervious.
Typically, and good evening, Michael Stein with Hudson Engineering. And just to respond to that, typically if you're using gravel in a driveway, because of the vehicle traffic on top of it, it gets compacted and it becomes not as impervious as asphalt, but it really reduces the permeability of it. When you're putting this under a deck, it's not getting that traffic, it's not getting that same compaction. So even if it's left as soil, it's not gonna be any different than having the soil. Just the stone would actually provide a little bit of storage volume within it. And actually, if anything, you're reducing the runoff that would come from it.
And perhaps erosion control too. I mean, perhaps maybe I'm wrong, Michael, but yeah, also to the benefit of having gravel, besides just leaving the soil there, is to prevent erosion when the water does run through.
Yeah.
Kind of spread the water out more evenly.
Right, and especially once it's under cover of the deck, you're not gonna be able to grow any vegetation. So this basically gives it a measure to prevent any erosion from really being able to happen.
Right.
Okay, and erecting the deck that way, having some spacing between the planks is enough to call that part of it pervious?
Yes,
Okay,
that's kind of standard.
And
okay,
you'll notice that on our coverage diagram, some of the elements like the stair, both the stair leading from this lower area to the upper area and the stair leading to the yard over here, we're actually counting those, even though they're also constructed out of the same decking material and they're technically impervious. Since it is a little bit more structure and it's slightly more solid than just the surface of the deck, we're counting those against the available flood volume, as well as these dots that you're seeing running around are the structure required for the deck and for the spa. So we are being careful to not completely consider all of that completely pervious, but we're counting against a couple of these areas that are a little bit more solid.
okay, thanks.
Okay.
Great,
Thank you.
and then I
You can
believe
move on.
we received a memo from the village landscape consultant, and I guess maybe Bill, Kenny, if you'd like to address some of those or discuss the planting plan, I can put the plan up on the screen if you want, or let you share your screen, whatever's best.
Sure, perhaps I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I am a professional landscape architect, soil scientist, and a wetland scientist. Also, two other professionals from my firm have worked on this project. That would be Katie Haas, she's a landscape architect, and Carolyn Matthews, who is both a certified ecologist and a certified arborist. So, it's been a pleasure to work on this with Steve and Caroline, and we really brought a lot of expertise to ensure that this is done in a way that protects the coastal resources, the wetlands, as well as other important resources on the property, which include some large trees and that create this good canopy on the property that Brandon was pointing out in those aerial photos earlier. This image, the drawing that you see before you, is the planting plan that we developed. Here, Mamaroneck Harbor's East Basin is at the top of the drawing or to the north. And
Mr. Kenny, can you just enlarge it a little bit so people can see it better?
sure, I was trying to, and then I can move it around.
Yeah,
So,
because we don't need to see the tree planting detail. We just.
Okay, yep.
Right, okay.
so, and we're looking at the rear of the property. The house is here, the existing garage, the proposed cabana proposed breezeway, and then the reconfiguration of the deck with the spa. So when we were hired, we looked at existing conditions, identified and confirmed that the wetlands were waterward of the seawall, that there's no wetlands landward of the seawall. And then we assessed all the existing conditions, particularly the significant trees. Carolyn, the arborist, looked at the trees, which included not just their current condition, but also developing a tree preservation plan that we could then work with both the town consultants as well as our design team to put together a plan to ensure that we protect these trees during construction as well as after construction. So the overall design has been in response to the trees on site. Particularly, there's a beautiful pin oak in the back of the site that is right here. It's a 45-inch oak. And the design has been very sensitive with keeping the pool and the deck tight to the house to keep it primarily outside of the canopy of that tree. We published a letter dated August 18th from 2020 that has some recommendations for tree protection. And Susan Oakley, your landscape architect, made a great recommendation that we take those recommendations for tree preservation and add that to Hudson Engineering's drawings where, for example, on their soil erosion and sediment control drawing, where often those type of notes are included. So I think that's a great idea because those are the drawings that contractors are going to have in hand when the work is being done. So that will help to ensure that that tree is properly protected during construction. And then also for access to the site, we carefully considered that with the owner, Steve and Caroline, as well as the rest of the design team, and concluded with some significant trees that are in the front of the property. The best thing to do was to use the existing driveway, and then access would be down to the right of the garage and back to the back of the property. And lastly, the planting that's being proposed is nearly 100% plants that are native to the Northeast. So we're happy to add that, as well as the owners are happy with that as well. So we're pleased to be presenting that to you. There's just some green giant arborvitae, just four of those species here, and they are not native, but due to their tolerance to shade and also with deer, we've proposed that there, and they just work very well. But otherwise, we're using native plants. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to attempt to answer them.
Can we talk about on the left side of the pool there, that area there's a lot of plants being put in, but they're classified as ground cover. Chapter 300 of our zoning code requires that the pool be screened from the neighbors for noise and other things that come with the pool. So in addition to any security fencing, there needs to be screening. And on that side of the property, there's 2 mature trees, it looks like, just on the other side of the property line. So I'm not sure you want to put in a line of shrubs to screen the pool better from the neighbors. So you might have to plant something a little bit closer to the pool for screening. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
The plants that are listed, things like phlox and echinacea and whatnot, are pretty low growing.
Agreed.
So the purpose of chapter 300 is not to be a nuisance to the neighbors.
Okay.
Now the neighbor on that side is going to have their own pool in their yard, so maybe it won't matter. but We need to just keep an eye out on that, for that.
Sure. I think that wouldn't be a problem to incorporate some shrub plantings to,
Something to, yeah, just to screen it visually,
Sure.
and to screen it auditorially, or if that's a word. Hmm.
And am I correct to see that that one little corner of the pool is under the drip line of the pin oak? Yeah, right there.
yes, yes.
So that will be disturbed during the construction of the pool.
Yes, and and we have some measures, the measures that are being proposed to deal with that are, we're gonna use an air spade before any construction begins to basically it's a high pressured air gun or rifle, whatever you want to call it, that allows you to remove this surface soil, and it exposes the roots, and then you can then identify significant roots, prune them properly, and so we would do that, expose those, prune them properly, and then we would install a fence to protect the areas beyond that. And after construction, aerate the rest of the root zone to encourage root growth, particularly fibrous root growth, to ensure that the tree will be properly preserved.
And I actually, when I was reading through the landscape consultant's comments, it seemed like maybe she hadn't seen the letter that Bill was discussing that was issued back in August, wherein Carolyn from Bill's office did outline everything Bill just said in terms of the air spade and this particular issue of if roots are encountered within the excavation zone. So yeah,
No,
it was specifically.
I think
addressed.
that Ms. Oakley she actually referenced that memo in her memo to us.
Oh, okay.
And she's just asking that it be memorialized on the plans.
On
of
the drawings
contractor.
instead of just in the letter, right?
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So the contractor has that information on site.
We'd be happy to have those notes.
Great idea.
Right. Okay, you guys have any more you want to present to us? We can pull the screen. Okay. Okay, so that sort of sums the project up. We got to some questions and whatnot, but perhaps we can turn our attention now to our consulting planner, who will just give us the status of the other approvals that this application has received already, and where we're going from here, in addition to the planning board. Stephen?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm too familiar. I mean, I know that they,
I know Ashley's not here tonight, right?
well, I mean, I know that they were before the Harbor Coastal
Right.
Commission and they got a consistency vote from them. So I think they're all set on that regard.
And I think they have to go to BAR.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in case you're curious, we plan on submitting this upcoming Monday for our first appearance later in May before the BAR.
Okay.
Were there any conditions on the HCZMC resolution? I didn't get a chance to take a look online and see if it was there.
No.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Okay. Now, Esteban, Esteban Garcia from Kelwood Sessions is our consulting engineer, and he had worked with HCZM on the stormwater management plan. And we have been informed that we basically signed off on it. Usually we do some work on that document as well. But the heavy lifting on this one was done by HCZM. So Esteban, why don't you just sort of summarize and make sure that you're in agreement with that statement I just made?
Yeah, after working with Hudson Engineering and working both with the commission, Harbor Coastal Commission, I was able to, they were able to satisfy all engineering comments and was able to provide an approval last month on their stormwater plan. So there are no longer any engineering
Any
related.
outstanding issues on that?
No longer any engineering related outstanding issues with the current proposal or
I'm
the current.
surprised there are outstanding issues. Michael, you've done enough of these. You think that you would know the drill. I know everyone is different. Okay. Susan Oakley, do you want to say anything about your review with regards to the landscape plan?
I think most of it was covered
Okay.
in the comments by the architect and William Kenny. So I have nothing more to add than was in my April 22nd and today's memo. I think maybe the memo today was in reference to finally seeing Caroline Young's, the letter to Caroline Young from Carolyn Matthews. So the way that they're going to treat the tree is very protective. And so I applaud that, and that it will be added to the plans so that from before construction begins, everyone will be on the same page regarding tree preservation and protection.
All right. It
And
sounds like,
if you would like, I can give a brief overview of the stormwater. It really hasn't changed since the original submission. However, I know we have a lot of new board members that, so whatever you would like.
one new board member and all new staff. Does anybody want an overview of the stormwater? I mean, I guess once you've seen one SWIP, you've sort of seen them all, especially since you're doing them all, Michael.
I also have confidence that HCCMC did their due diligence on that.
Yes,
So
yes.
between Mr. Garcia and Mr. Stein and HCCMC, I'm okay.
Ms. Goldstein was the chairperson of HCMC for how many years
Oh, 5.
or so? Yes, before she came to us. So, okay. All right. When you came before us in September, we did the secret classification as a type 2 action, as it was a private house. And so it falls under the type 2. So that's taken care of. We also need for the wetlands permit, we need a public hearing. At that time, we opened a public hearing. So we are going to open the continued public hearing for public comment at this time. So I need a motion to open the continued public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We can do this by voice vote.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes, all in favor, aye.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this would be the time that if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this application, to raise your hand, and Amber, the village planner, will promote you to participants so that you can comment on the application.
I don't see anyone who wishes to speak on this application.
Okay. And then we also, I know the public notice also gives a phone number if people need to call in, dial in, but I think we're good. All right. So at this point in time, the board, do you want to keep the public hearing open for comment at a later date, or we can close the public hearing, so we can either adjourn it or close it? How do you feel? It looks like we have just some minor issues to deal with at this point in time.
I think we can close it.
I agree.
All right. Okay, so I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So
So
moved.
moved. I'll second.
Okay, all right, let's
We'll
do,
take turns.
okay, John,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, the public hearing's closed. Okay, so at this point in time, I think that we just need for you to relook a little bit at screening the pool from the neighbors, especially on the left side. It looks like there's adequate screening on the right with some plants, but and perhaps just resubmit a landscape plan and we can ask our attorney then to also, and the notes about the tree on the engineering drawings. And we can ask our attorney to prepare a resolution for the next meeting. Does that make sense to everyone? I see our attorney nodding. She's
Yes.
in agreement. Okay. All right. Everybody's okay. Do you guys have any questions for us? Tony, you're muted.
Sorry, I try to limit the background noise.
Yeah.
So it's putting the additional notes on the plan to address the Terabella memorandum, the revised landscaping plan to address the screening, and that's
Right.
it.
That's it. Well, yeah, because your SWIP's all done, right?
Yes.
Okay,
All good.
okay.
Great.
And we'll tentatively schedule you then for the next meeting. And but of course, you have to get the paperwork in time for us to be able to review it. So you work with Amber on that. Okay.
Of course. Great. Thank
All
you
right,
so much.
great. All right. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to our next application, which is a new application. At 626 Halsted Avenue, which is in the C1 zone, the site plan review. The applicant proposes to construct a new 4,342 square foot parking area, to be exact, with 13 spaces in a loading area behind the existing mixed-use commercial and residential building at 626 Halsted Avenue. So we need to, I see we promoted the participants, great. Okay. You're up, Mr. Spatz. I believe you're going to be the speaker. You want to
Yes, good evening.
show us, you want to start your video, or you want to remain anonymous?
I would love, I can't see
He's
me.
never anonymous.
Yeah, exactly. Like never, notorious here. Man, I'm sure I can't see me, but maybe you all can see me.
We can't see you.
Nope.
Do you have your cover on your camera?
No.
I learned that last time.
I raised my hand. Also, I want to make sure that my client, Michael Lage, is also
Yes,
being promoted.
but we can't see him either.
I'm here. I don't know if you can
Okay.
hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, well, if you want to
Well,
remain in the dark,
yeah,
it's your choice.
Kinda.
I'm just going to put up a picture of Brad Pitt. That's me. Okay, let's go. All right. So, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board, Andrew Spatz, 650 Halsted Avenue, Suite 105, Mamaroneck, New York 10543. On behalf of the applicant this evening, we're here as indicated initially by our chair. The applicant proposes to construct a 4,432 square foot parking area with 13 spaces and a loading area behind an existing mixed-use commercial and residential building, which is located in our C1 zone. Currently, the structure, what just happened?
I just put up the drawing, so that.
Oh,
way-
okay.
It'll make a
Listen,
little
I don't have my 9 and 13-year-old here to be my tech support.
Oh, we
so-
have Michael with us still.
Okay,
Okay.
wow, all right. Yes, the structure currently has 6 houses, 6-family house with 2 commercial tenants on the first floor, of which one tenant is a barber and the other is a hair salon. Although there is a breezeway located at this property, it's not feasible for vehicle traffic. As such, there's no other direct access to the proposed parking lot. So the owner, my client of 626 Halsted Avenue, entered into a long-term lease with the owner of his neighbor, 630 Halsted Avenue, that would be Mario Barella and Luigi Barella, for access and use of their entrance and driveway for the ability to access the proposed parking area. The proposed parking area will provide stormwater mitigation to address the impervious surface and potential runoff, which will be detailed and reviewed in thorough detail by Michael Stein, who's present, of Hudson Engineering and Consulting. By the way, Michael, next time I can't, that's a tough act to follow with jacuzzis and pools by the harbor. That's a tough act to follow with a parking lot, but I'm not going to go there. The additional parking will alleviate constraints. And I think this is sort of an important point, members of planning board, to understand that this particular region of Halsted Avenue it's quite unique because there's a tremendous presence of mixed use. You have delis, restaurant, mini markets, residential, office, one of which is mine, and other professional uses in this very small area. So obviously this particular parking area would be greatly beneficial for both the residential tenants and the commercial tenants housed at 626 Halsted Avenue. I do believe this would be a consistent use for this particular area, wouldn't create any negative impacts. And just please be mindful of the fact that immediately behind to the west of the property lies the LIR, no, God, not that, the Metro North. So really we're talking two neighbors. The frontage is Halsted Avenue, and on the rear side would be Metro North railroad tracks. I think that Michael Stein would be bad. Thank you for that vantage point. So without further ado, I'd like to bring back Michael.
Yes, good evening. Again, Michael Stein with Hudson Engineering. And I just figured I'd put this photo up because it does give you an idea of what the property in the back looks like. And yes, right immediately behind the property is the Metro North Railroad. For the most part, it's basically a dirt area, dirt and gravel, and there is some pavement back here, but it's not really a proper parking area. And so in looking at the proposed layout, we're looking at accommodating a total of 13 parking spaces. And that breaks down that 1 space per dwelling unit plus half a space per bedroom. So for the residential portion, there's 3 1-bedroom and 3 2-bedroom units. So that results in a total of 11 parking spaces required for the residential. And then for the barber shop and the hair salon, it's really a very small space. And so the required parking for there is basically 1.14, but obviously we're rounding that up to 2 parking spaces. There's 200 square feet for the barbershop, 200 square feet for the hair salon. Where the parking area is located, we're meeting all the 10-foot setback, parking setback from the property lines, obviously with the exception of where we're joining into the adjacent property and utilizing their driveway. We are also providing 1 loading zone, although the likelihood of delivery from UPS or from FedEx or et cetera, or Amazon actually, it would be probably unlikely parking all the way in the back. More than likely, they'll continue to use the front, but we're providing the loading space as per the code requirements. We're putting in a full new stormwater management system. We're providing a water quality row where it allows all the silt and settlement to settle out, and then it's separated into the other chambers where it's fully infiltrated. I know we had received comments from Keller Sessions' office. My staff has gone through revising everything, but nothing has been submitted back. But we'll definitely have that in time for the next meeting. Try to at least go along with same with all the other applications and fit a pool in, but kind of didn't.
Hey, just go 2 doors down now, Michael. That's fine. At 650, we would love to have that.
Yeah.
So we're here to answer any questions for the board.
Okay. Before we, does anybody have any questions now? We can hear from Keller Sessions. We also have to type this for SEQA. So
I think I'm just dumbfounded that actually parking spaces are being increased in the Village of Mamaroneck.
right.
I
know it's a rare occurrence.
Wait. Is that a good thing or? Okay.
That's a good
thing.
thing.
Make sure. Okay, Chair.
That's a good thing.
that was Ms. Goldstein. Yes. Right.
Oh, okay. Couldn't see. Okay.
Okay. This seems pretty straightforward to me. When I first looked at it, it didn't look like the breezeway was wide enough to be used, but now we have the explanation. The only thing I still wonder about is why the front of the building says Railroad Way instead of Halsted Avenue. But that could be a previous Railroad Avenue, right? It could
Chair,
be-
historically, I only by virtue of the fact that I was there a couple of years ago when they repaved, there actually are tracks down the
Really?
middle of Halsted Avenue. I gotta tell you,
With trolley tracks?
yes, Chair.
And so
Next time,
Halsted used to be called Railroad back in the day?
I could have been.
That's what
but,
that's what we assumed, right?
Yeah.
It's an old designation, right?
Yeah, the designation is based upon the survey that Hoppy prepared.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so other reviews that are required of this application, HCZM indicated they would like to see you guys. They may not do much, but I think you're gonna be at HCZM at their next meeting, is that correct?
Chair, I'm not aware of that.
Is this the,
That
am I
was for,
thinking of,
I
that
think
was
you might be
for
thinking of a
another
different one.
application that.
am I
they would
thinking
like
of
to
a
see
different
it.
application?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was office space over 8,000.
Oh,
square
right,
feet.
that's a different application, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, and you have to go to BAR, right? Are you going to BAR, architecture review as well?
Michael,
Either.
I
And I'm not
don't,
sure. I'd defer to both either Amber or Frank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was just gonna chime in that I thought based on the cost of the project, it was required to go to BAR. I don't know if Frank is. I think Frank, you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
threshold, I think is what,
The threshold is 10,000. Anything over 10,000, they would have to go to BAR.
Michael promised he would charge less than that. Don't worry, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Obviously, if we're above that, then we'll certainly
Go to BAR.
comply with all
Okay,
codes and requirements.
okay.
Not much
Um,
architecture to review, though.
Yeah, yeah, what would
Yeah,
BAR
right,
look?
yeah. there's
What would they
nothing-
do?
Look at?
There's
They look at
nothing to look
nothing.
at, right, right.
Yeah.
Listen, they're running out of spaces out in LA for the Star, the Walk of
Yeah.
Fame. So we're gonna start doing it here in Halsted.
I know, Brad, okay.
Um,
I think, okay, so you got Kellard Sessions' first memo and that you're reviewing it, so I'm not sure. Mr. Garcia asked about, is there anything that you want to say about this, or are you just gonna wait for their next submission?
I would, most of my comments were stormwater related, just some stuff I didn't see in the SWIP, that some missing information, so,
Okay,
I'm aware that Hudson is working on my comments, and if they
okay,
Mr. Garcia, if I can, as counsel for the applicant, I want to thank your firm, Amber, and members of the planning board for having this brought to our attention before the meeting, before our actually initial meeting. So that is really great. That helps us focus in on what we need to arrive at and achieve. So Mr. Garcia and Amber and the planning board, thank you. That
not
really,
that we don't want to see you all, but if we can make your visits to planning
no,
board
that was very helpful.
fewer,
Thank
by
you.
starting early and fast tracking a little bit, we'll do that, as long as nobody minds. You know,
We appreciate
so.
that. Thank you.
Okay, okay, so we're at the point in the meeting where we can do a secret determination. It's been recommended to us that this is a type 2 action. And I don't remember why, and I didn't take good notes, so I don't know, Teresa, if you wanted, or Stephen, if you wanted to explain why it's type 2. It's because it's such a small project. Anybody?
Yeah, I was just looking back at the determination. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I was looking back at the summary that my colleague had done for it. And it was recommended to be type 2 based on 617.5C9 of the code. So I'm just trying to look up what that actual language is. Apologies for the. That's the type 2 action for construction or expansion of a primary or accessory non-residential structure or facility involving less than 4,000 square feet of gross floor area and not involving a change in zoning or a use variance, and consistent with local land use controls, but not radio communication or microwave transmission facilities.
This is more than
Just wanted to be
4,000.
difficult.
Yeah, it's more than 4,000.
This is more than 4,000.
Oh, is it more than 4,000 square feet?
It's 42.
43 something.
Oh, right, right.
432.
All right.
I think the 4,000 square feet that they're referring to there is the size of a building.
Building.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
That's
a
what I
building.
thought, right?
Now, if the board has any concerns, we can just treat it as an unlisted action under seeker. That's fine. It's clearly not a type 2. Excuse me, it's clearly not a type 1 action. So, and they have filled out a short form EAF. So it's really within your discretion to handle it either way.
I like unlisted.
I do too, because it seems a little ambiguous to say it's under 4,000 when it's not, even though that may refer to building size rather than square footage for a
No
parking lot.
problem. No problem.
Okay, and since it's unlisted, we have to then have findings, correct?
Yeah, what you would want to do since it's unlisted is just declare your intent to be lead agency.
Okay. Okay, so we do this in 2 motions, correct? Or we can do it in a single motion to
You can do it in a single motion.
type it as unlisted and declare the planning board as the lead agency.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, Cindy,
yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so we'll have to follow up on that. Okay, this is a public hearing as well, so I need a motion to open the public hearing. And if anyone is participating and watching, once the public hearing is open, this would be the time then for you to raise your hand to speak on this. So I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. This is to open the public hearing. Ellen,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, any member of the public who wishes to speak on this application, please raise your hand now, and Amber will promote you.
I do not see anyone who wishes to speak.
Okay. Okay. That's the case. We can, as the last one, we can either vote to adjourn to the next meeting, or we can close the public hearing. Anybody have it?
I would recommend that you keep it open until the next meeting, since you're still reviewing it and this is the first meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I need a motion then to adjourn the
Sure,
public
if I could
hearing.
just get a point of clarification from Mr. Stein, so that I don't want to waste your time is valuable. Mr. Stein, how long do you think for us to completely go through the items of the comments provided by Mr. Garcia for us to come back? Because I know planning board meets obviously twice a month, so I just want to make sure we pick a date that is viable.
I think that in order to get onto the agenda for the next meeting, you'd have to have the paperwork in by Amber. Is it this Friday, or because this is an open application, they have it until sometime next week?
The submission deadline for continuing applications was actually today, so I think we need to take a look at what it would be for the next meeting date.
All right.
So
I mean, if this is not complicated, and the point is that it has to be early enough that Esteban can get it and comment on it, so that the board has ample time to review it and we're not scrambling at the last minute.
I'll put it this way. I wouldn't say that we'll come in for the next meeting. While we've already addressed 90% of the comments, one of the comments we already knew we had to take care of is field testing, which
Okay.
That's not going to be in, that we're not
Right,
going to have
okay.
that time.
Okay,
Fair enough.
okay. So that's good to know. That's, I'm
Maybe
glad
the
we're
latter
having this
part, Chair.
conversation. Thank
of,
you, Andrew, for bringing that up so that everybody's on the same page. Okay. So we'll look for you, let's see, the end of May,
That would be the
Beginning of
24th. You may not get on the 12th, so that would be 26-ish. Okay.
26-ish. Is that, that's not Memorial Day, the day after, the week of Memorial Day, is it? Probably is.
It's before
Before, the
Memorial.
week
Continuing
before.
application submission should be 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. So if you're looking at the,
Okay.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so then let's have a motion then to adjourn the public hearing to the next time the applicant is before us, which is right now targeted to be the May 26th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. John,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, I think, is there any other discussion? Anybody have any other questions? Does the applicant have any questions for the board? Or are we good?
Nope,
Great.
I'm good.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think we're
great.
good.
All right, you know what needs to get done, and we'll see you when you're done.
Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair. And Michael, expect that swimming pool at my office building by 26th of May. I'm just kidding.
All right, before we adjourn the meeting, we have some business among the planning board members.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thank you,
night.
everyone.
Have a great evening, everyone. Be well.
At the last meeting, we talked about doing a site visit to Highview Street, and it appears from the emails today that we're looking at Monday afternoon after 2 o'clock. Is that good with everybody? I think, John, we haven't heard from you. I think,
Monday at 2?
or anytime after 2,
2 or later.
2 or later.
Yeah, later's the better for me.
How late is late?
5?
5? That's fine with me. I mean,
Sure.
you know, it's still light out. We
Still light.
can do 5. Is that okay with you, Frank?
It's okay with me, and I was informed by the applicant that we would have to enter the property to the left of 131. It might be 134, I'm not sure, but
Okay. Well, I think that we also,
because you-
Amber, you got communication from the architect that he also wants to be in attendance. So why don't, we're all good then for 5 o'clock on Monday, the 3rd. We'll have to notice it as a meeting of the planning board. And we'll let the architect know. And hopefully he can meet us there, but if he can't, we'll look at the plans and we'll have Frank there. So we'll be good. All right. Okay. I think that's everything. Anybody else have anything else they want to, the next meeting of the planning board is Wednesday, May 12th. And other than that, I think we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? We'll just do a voice vote. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're
Thanks,
very well
Cindy.
prepared tonight. Okay, great. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.